Welcome to this free Blender mini course for beginners. In this first lesson, we'll install Blender 3D and get familiar with its basic tools, interface, and navigation. If this is your first time opening the program, don't worry, I'll explain everything in detail. By the end of this course, we'll have created a location just like this, a tower on an island. You can download Blender 3D from the official website, blender.org. Go to the home page, click Download, and you'll be redirected to the next page where you can choose your operating system and install the latest version. Right now, we're looking at the default Blender scene. We won't need the camera and the light source for now, so I'll select them. I do this by holding Shift and left-clicking. I select the second object, then press X on the keyboard to delete them. You can see the hotkeys right down here. To rotate the camera in the viewport, you can click and hold the middle mouse button. Alternatively, go to the top menu, choose Edit, Preferences, navigate to the Input section, and check the box for Emulate 3-button mouse, then save your preferences. This way, you can rotate your view by holding Alt and left-clicking. Some people find this much more convenient. To zoom in on an object in the 3D viewport, we can use the scroll wheel. Scroll forward to zoom in, and scroll backward to zoom out. To pan, meaning to move parallel to the screen, hold down Shift and move right, left, up, or down. Below the 3D viewport is the timeline. This displays our frames. Frame 20, 40, 60, and so on. We don't need this timeline right now. To close it, hover your cursor over the border between the windows, click and hold the left mouse button, drag down, and collapse it. In the top right, we have the outliner. This lists all the objects currently in our scene. For now, that's just one cube and a collection, which is basically a folder. We can hide it just like we can hide individual objects. Below the outliner is the Properties panel. Right now, we're seeing the properties of this cube, its size, scale, and so on. This is also where you'll find modifiers, materials, and other settings that we'll cover a bit later. Since this course is focused on practice, let's open up our reference image right away. We'll pull the edge of the 3D viewport to create a second window, but instead of a 3D viewport, we'll change the window type to Image Editor. In the image editor, let's open the image of our location. You can download this image using the link in the video description. Once it's open, we can zoom in, pan around, and study the reference in detail. I suggest we start by modeling the island itself and the rocks surrounding it. Right now, we are in object mode. In this mode, we interact with objects as a whole. For example, to duplicate an object, we press Shift plus D to create a copy. To confirm its new position, just left-click. To undo an action, press Ctrl plus Z. To add a new object to the scene, go to the top menu, click Add, and let's add a mesh, cylinder. You can do this much faster by pressing Shift plus A and selecting the object you need. To see information about an object's transformations, hover over the small arrow on the side of the viewport, click it, and the side menu, or N panel, will open. Here you'll find information about the object's location, rotation, scale, and its real-world dimensions in meters. Let's say we want to move this cube to the right or to the left. To do this, we use the Move tool. A manipulator with several axes appears on the object, the Z, X, and Y axes. Let's pull the Y-axis to move the object. Notice that the movement is smooth, without snapping. To snap it to the grid, hold down Ctrl while moving. Down here, we can see that it moved exactly 2 meters. The next tool is Rotation. We'll use this to turn our objects. We can rotate freely on all axes or constrain it to a specific one. To change the object's size, we use the Scale tool. With this, you can stretch the model along one specific axis, 2 axes at the same time, or scale the entire object proportionally. To reset a changed parameter in the panel, just hover over it and press the backspace key. The values instantly return to their defaults. You might have already noticed the orange dot in the center of the object. This is the origin point. All object transformations happen relative to this point when we're working in object mode. It's really easy to see during rotation. Right now, we are rotating the object precisely around this point, its center. Let's switch to another interaction mode, edit mode. Blender has 6 object interaction modes in total. In edit mode, we can actually edit the mesh of the model. It's made up of vertices, which are essentially points. We can select them one by one or grab several at once and interact with them exactly like we did with the whole model, using our basic tools: move, rotate, and scale. The hotkey for moving is G. Press G and we can move the selected vertices. To lock their movement to a specific axis, just press, say, Z on the keyboard. This locks all other axes, so we're only moving the geometry vertically. The exact same thing works for the Y and X axes. The R key activates the rotation tool. Press R and rotate. The S key is for scale. Let's switch to a side orthographic view and select the entire mesh of the model by pressing the A key. Let's move it up by 1 meter. Press G, then Z, pull it up, and hold Ctrl to enable grid snapping. In the Transform menu, we can see we've lifted the geometry exactly 1 meter. To quickly jump back into object mode, the easiest way is to press the Tab key. It quickly toggles between these two modes. Notice how the origin stayed at the 0 coordinates. That's because when you move geometry inside edit mode, the object's origin point stays exactly where it was. Try rotating the cube now, and you'll see that the rotation is happening relative to its base. Let's move on to modeling the island. Right now, our default cube is 2 meters across. I think the width of our island is about 9 meters, the length is around 7, and the height is 1 meter. Let's enter these values into the Dimensions panel. For the Y-axis, type 9 meters. For the X-axis, 7 meters. And for the Z-axis, 1 meter. Notice that the values in the scale field have changed as well. To lock in these changes, press Ctrl+A and choose Scale from the pop-up menu. The changes are now baked in and permanently saved to the model's mesh. Right now, the island is just a flat rectangular box. But looking at the reference, it has an indentation where the pier connects to it and its edges are rounded. Let's model that. Press Tab to jump into edit mode. First, we need to add some extra edges along the X-axis. For this, we'll use the Loop Cut tool by pressing Ctrl+R. A preview of the cut will appear on the model. Left-click to confirm the cut, and then right-click right away to reset its position so it stays perfectly in the middle. In the bottom left corner, the Adjust Last Operation menu will pop up. Let's increase the number of cuts to 2. Right now, they're a bit too far apart. Let's bring them closer to the center. Press S, then Y, and slide your mouse to bring them together. Next, let's make 2 more cuts going the other way. Press Ctrl+R again, and scroll your mouse wheel up once to instantly set the number of cuts to 2. Using the Scale tool, press S, spread them apart along the Y-axis. Now, we're going to push one of these central faces back along the X-axis to create the indentation we need. Blender has 3 geometry selection modes: Vertex Select, Edge Select, and Face Select. We need Face Select right now. Turn it on, click on this side face to select it, press G, then X, and push it inward. Perfect, we've got the cutout for our pier. To round off the outer corners of the island, switch to Edge Select mode by pressing 2 on the top number row. Hold down Shift and select all the vertical corner edges we need. We're going to create a bevel on them. To do this, press Ctrl+B and slowly drag your mouse outward to adjust the size of the bevel. While dragging, scroll your mouse wheel up to add more segments and make it smoother. Left-click to confirm. Down in the Parameters menu on the bottom left, let's set the exact amount for these bevels to 1 meter and the segments to 7. Now that we've rounded the outside edges, it makes sense to do the same for the inside corners of our cutout. Select these two edges, press Ctrl+B, and pull out a bevel. As you can see, if we go too far, they start overlapping and creating weird geometry artifacts. We want to avoid this, so while you're still pulling the bevel, press the C key on your keyboard to enable clamp overlap. Now, when the polygons hit each other, they stop and won't cross over. Scroll your mouse wheel down a bit to reduce the segment count so the mesh density matches the other bevels. Great. Because the geometry collided, we now have duplicate vertices right here and here. To get rid of them and clean up the mesh, press A to select everything. Then, right-click and from the context menu, choose Merge Vertices, then by Distance. A notification will pop up at the bottom saying 4 vertices were removed. Those were exactly the points sitting on top of each other. With everything still selected, press X and choose Limited Dissolve. This cleans up and dissolves any unnecessary vertices and edges sitting on completely flat surfaces, turning the top and bottom parts of the island into large, single n-gons. We do this so that later on, we can create a clean, even bevel all the way around the top edge of the island. Select the top face, press Ctrl+B, and create a bevel. I'll make it about this big. For this specific model, we don't need perfect topological accuracy. Let's jump back into object mode with Tab and look at our model. The shape is great, but you'll notice the shading looks really blocky and low poly. That's because the default shading mode, Shade Flat, is active. We want it smooth. Right-click and select Shade Smooth. The geometry smooths out, but now the shape looks weirdly melted and soft because we haven't told Blender which edges are supposed to be hard angles. Go back into Edit mode, select the top face, switch to Edge Select mode by pressing 2, right-click, and mark this edge loop as sharp by selecting Mark Sharp. Next, hold down Alt and double-click the bottom edge to select the entire edge loop at once. Click again and choose Mark Sharp. Awesome, we've modeled the island and fixed the shading. Before we move on to the rocks, let's tidy up our outliner. Double-click the name of our object and rename it to Ground. Let's also rename the main collection. We'll call it Island. Inside of it, create another sub-collection by clicking the plus icon. Name this one Rocks. This is where we'll keep all the rock meshes. Making sure this new collection is selected, press Shift+A and add a cube to the scene. All our rocks are going to start out as simple cubes. To focus solely on this cube, press the / key on your numpad to enter local view. Now, only our selected object is visible, and the rest of the scene is temporarily hidden. Switch to a side orthographic view, press Tab to enter edit mode, and move the entire mesh up along the Z-axis so that the origin point sits exactly at the base of the cube. Switch back to object mode. Right now, this cube is way too big. Let's scale it down using the Dimensions panel. Left-click and hold on the X value, then drag your mouse down to highlight the Y value as well. Now, slowly drag your mouse to the left to decrease both values at the same time. Let's drop them down to about 1.3 meters, and we'll set the Z height to 1.5 meters. Go back into Edit mode, switch to Face Select by pressing 3, and click on the top face. Press S and scale it inward slightly so it tapers towards the top, just like a rock in our reference. It looks okay, but that top cut is way too perfectly flat and unnatural. Switch to Edge Select by pressing 2 and select one of the top edges. To slide this edge down along the existing geometry, double-tap the G key. This activates the Edge Slide tool. The edge you're sliding along will highlight in yellow. Slide the edge down a bit and left-click to place it. Now the shape looks much more organic and random, like a real rock. Go back to object mode. To finalize the proportions we messed with in the Dimensions panel, Make absolutely sure to press Ctrl+A and select Scale. The scale is now applied and reset to 1.0 on all axes. Looking at the reference, the rocks have soft, beveled edges. This time, instead of doing it manually with Ctrl+B, we'll do it procedurally using a modifier. The Modifiers panel is right here in the Properties tab. It's the blue wrench icon. Modifiers are basically live, adjustable algorithms layered on top of your mesh. Click Add Modifier, go to Generate, and choose Bevel. This instantly rounds off all the sharp corners. In the settings, let's set the amount to 0.15 meters and the segments to 2. The biggest advantage of using a modifier over destructive editing is that we can keep changing the blocky base shape of the rock, and the modifier will continually generate bevels on top of it without ruining our geometry. Right-click and hit Shade Smooth. Once again, the shading looks a bit messy. To fix this, go to the Bevel Modifier settings, drop down the Shading tab, and check the box for Harden Normals. You can apply the modifier, baking it permanently into the mesh, by clicking the drop-down arrow in its header and selecting Apply, or by hovering your mouse over the modifier panel and pressing Ctrl+A. If you do this and switch to edit mode, you'll see the bevels are now real physical polygons, and the edges are marked as sharp. But let's undo that with Ctrl+Z. We are about to create a few variations of these rocks, and it's so much easier to push and pull simple base geometry while the bevel modifier does the heavy lifting in the background. Let's make a second variation. Duplicate the base rock with Shift+D and slide it along the Y-axis a little bit. Switch to edit mode. We'll tweak its proportions. Let's make the base narrower and the top wider. To select geometry straight through the mesh, press Alt+Z to toggle X-ray mode. You can also click this button right up here in the corner of the viewport. Select the bottom face, press S, and scale it down. Next, grab the top face, press G, then Z, and pull it up slightly. Turn off X-ray mode with Alt+Z, exit edit mode, and see how it looks. Moving on to the third variation. Duplicate our base rock again and move it over on the Y-axis. This time, we're going to make a large version. In edit mode, select the entire mesh with A and press S to scale. By default, it scales on all axes at once. We don't want that, so while scaling, press Shift+Z to lock the Z-axis. Now the mesh only scales outward along the X and Y axes. Make it about this big. Select the top face and drop it down slightly on the Z-axis. Switch to Edge Select, grab a side edge, double-tap G for Edge Slide, and slide it down. Do the exact same thing to the edge on the opposite side. The result is a nice, flat, wide rock. Back in object mode, check the reference. We have large rocks, but also some really small ones. Let's make a tiny rock. Duplicate the main one with Shift+D and move it aside. In edit mode, select the whole mesh and squash it a bit along the X-axis by pressing S, then X. Grab the top face and lower it down. Then, select one of the top edges and pull it up slightly to give it an asymmetrical look. Done. We have a perfect little rock. I think the logic and the workflow here are pretty clear by now. You should have no trouble creating the final 2 rocks yourself using these exact same steps. Next, we'll start placing them in our scene. Alright, we now have 6 different rocks. To exit local view, just hit the / key on your numpad again. The island pops back onto the screen. Let's slide these rocks out of the way along the X-axis. You could select them manually by holding Shift and clicking each one, but it's much faster to go over to the outliner, right-click on the rocks collection, and hit Select Objects. This instantly highlights everything inside that collection. Then, press G, hit X, and slide them over. Let's start placing the biggest rocks first. Select a large rock and press G. It moves freely in 3D space right now. To lock its height so it slides perfectly along the ground plane, press Shift plus Z. Let's drop this rock right about here. Press Shift plus D to duplicate it, and again, pressing Shift plus Z, slide the copy over to a new spot. Let's rotate this duplicate 90 degrees so it faces a different direction. Press R for rotate, hit Z to lock the vertical axis, and just type the number 90 on your keyboard. The object snaps exactly 90 degrees. If you ever need to flip that angle to the negative side, just hit the minus key and press Enter to confirm. While we're placing these assets, we can keep tweaking their shapes to create even more unique variations. This really brings the scene to life. Let's adjust this one. Jump into Edit mode, drop an edge down, nudge the one next to it, and pull the top face up. Let's drop this rock near the back of the island. Since the original mesh was small, let's scale it up in object mode. Press S and scale it up by about 1.5 times. Now, notice how the bevels from our modifier look stretched and weird. That's because the object's scale has changed. You absolutely must press Ctrl plus A and apply scale. Write this rule down. If your scale isn't applied, meaning it isn't set to 1.0, modifiers will glitch out. Let's rotate this rock with R, then Z, and line it up with our reference. Grab the next rock and place it on the right side of the island. Rotate it 90 degrees on the Z-axis, scale it up just a bit, and immediately apply the scale with Ctrl plus A, then scale. In the reference image, it looks a bit narrower, so let's hop into Edit mode and flatten it out along the X-axis by pressing S, then X. Nudge it right to the edge of the island and twist it slightly on the Z-axis. Perfect. The 4 main rocks are set. Let's move to the medium ones. Grab the flat rock and drop it near the edge. In Edit mode, pull the top face up with G, then Z. Grab an edge, double tap G for edge slide, and move it to break up the shape. Back in object mode, rotate this rock on the Z-axis by -25 degrees. Grab another rock and bring it over to the edge. By the way, here's a handy trick in Blender. While moving an object with G, if you hold down Shift, the object moves in slow motion. This gives you ultra-precise, smooth control when placing things, which is super useful. To create the next rock from our reference, just grab a similar one nearby, duplicate it with Shift plus D, and slide it over on the X-axis. Spin it around -180 degrees on the Z-axis. Scale it down a bit with S. Keep in mind, scaling always happens from the origin point. Slide it over on the Y-axis, jump into Edit mode, and make it slightly thinner by pressing S, then X. Head back to object mode and apply the scale with Ctrl plus A, then scale. If you want, tweak the shape slightly. Grab the bottom edge and move it. Excellent. I'm confident you can place the rest of the smaller rocks on your own. I'll just speed up the video here so we can keep moving. And here's what the scene looks like with all the rocks in place. You don't have to copy my exact layout. Feel free to scatter them however you like, as long as the composition feels balanced. Finally, we need to make sure the scale is applied to every single piece. Select all the rocks in your collection, press Ctrl plus A, and apply scale. There's one final detail to fix. The perspective, or focal length, that we see in our 2D reference image looks different from the perspective in our 3D viewport. This is an easy fix. Open up the side end panel, switch over to the View tab, and look for the focal length parameter. By default, it's set to 50 millimeters. Let's change that to 80 millimeters. In simple terms, focal length is basically the field of view of your viewport's virtual camera. The higher the number, the closer and flatter the object appears. The lower the number, the wider the field of view view, which stretches the perspective. And that wraps up our basic introduction to Blender and the landscape blockout for our scene. In the next lesson, we'll dive straight into modeling the wooden pier. If you have any questions at all, drop them down in the comments. I'll make sure to answer them, or someone else from the community will help you out. See you in the next one.